Live from the Motor City, all the way to the Volunteer State. It's time for the Reckless Speculation Podcast, where we recklessly speculate the latest news in the world of sports. From college football to NASCAR, we've got you covered. And don't forget to stick around for the world-famous Bet Your Nuts, where we will give you your best bets to make the most money. Now sit back, grab your favorite drink of choice, and join Robbie Davis, Raj Mehta, Brandon Chain, and Tom Sloan. It's showtime.
Welcome, everybody. Today we have a special edition. It is a shorter version. We're doing 30 minutes, recapping some little football game that happened over the weekend, giving our views on it. I know everyone's been listening to a lot of it, but this is a half walk or a get half drunk version of our normal reckless speculation. We will be back Thursday with the full version, but thank you for joining us. And if you like it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, all of that good stuff that you hear on every podcast or video. Without further ado, let me introduce our crew. We'll start off with Raj Mehta.
What's happening, brother?
Oh, just a good Tuesday. And then Brandon Chain.
Hey, fellas, how are y'all?
And then in the news capital of America at the moment, Tom Sloan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, fellas, how we doing tonight?
Well, that is a perfect segue. We are going to talk first about how we are doing and how we did. We all got on Thursday. We made several reckless prediction and gambling odds. Tom, I know you and I were on the Phillies minus 1.5. So let's start with you. We were on the losing end of that. How'd your Super Bowl bets turn out?
Well, I'll just say I hit one. I lost on the anthem. What I bet was 202. I think that FanDuel had on there said 202. I saw it timed anywhere from 2 minutes 1 second to 202 on the nose. So needless to say, that one went down.
That's
drain.
A heartbreaker.
Yeah, we were sitting there with the clock, and it was like, oh, he's gonna let that last tune carry, but nope, that wasn't the case. So then I picked the wrong Gatorade. I picked red. It was orange, which they never showed. They never showed on the broadcast.
I think
it was
purple.
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 Yeah, it was purple.
I saw it today.
No, it was
purple.
orange. It was orange from what I saw because I Googled it and then it showed them being doused with orange. But maybe it was
what
purple.
the video I saw was purple,
orange.
but it may have been a double Gatorade thing.
So the only one I hit on was the 2-minute warning pick, which I bet that it would fall not on the 2-minute warning exactly for the first half. And for a split second, I thought I was going to lose that one too, but that somehow they got the snap off right before the 2-minute warning, which I was like, yeah. So I thought I was alive, but nope. And my parlay, I got a parlay on DraftKings that, yeah, the defense didn't do me any good. So needless to say, it was another stink fest in the speakeasy, which I'm pretty used to that happening by now.
I've never actually bet on the anthem. How early do they post that? Or is it like right before they start singing, or is it on there all day?
That's interesting because initially it'll start out at a certain point, and then I think this was 2 minutes, and then I saw it move to 2 minutes and 5 seconds. But invariably, there's always somebody in sound check or something like that leaks what basically the time of it all. And it's almost gotten to a point where there's a little bit of misdirection with, the singers not holding their notes as long or whatnot. But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, you could make a lot of money exchanges hands over that. So it makes sense that they're going to be cryptic.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, hell, I mean, if you're Chris Stapleton, hey, you're playing for free, but just go ahead and bet and then just throw it down. Brandon, how'd you do?
I was 3 for 4, so not bad. I had KC plus 1.5, which later I put some on the money line, but initially when I did the prop bets, I had under 5.5 sacks for the total game. I think there were only 2. I had Pacheco over 47.5 yards. I think he had 70. And then I had, of course, Travis Kelce to score a touchdown, which was, first touchdown KC scored. But the one I should have hit on that didn't happen was Devontae Smith scoring a touchdown. I mean, he just stepped out of bounds at like the 1 or 2 yard line. I mean, he was wide open. Should have scored, which, that changed the game for you and gave you another TD for your boy Hurts. So you hit your 3 TDs for him, which is pretty impressive.
Raj, how about yourself? How'd you do?
So I won on Kansas City. I went back and did Kansas City money line. Not necessarily the smartest thing. The Pacheco over on rushing yards. And then the odds weren't great, but a Kelce TD. I lost on the national anthem. I said the over, expecting a guitar player and a country crooner to hold some notes and whammy bar or some shit. Like, I don't excuse my language, but shows you what I know about Stapleton. I know he's pretty cool and kind of like a throwback. But anyways, and then I lost on my 2 overs, one of which I was dead set on, and that was Jerick McKinnon getting over 22.5 receiving. And I did research that when McCole Hardeman's out, he is their yak guy, and like 9 out of 10 times he's hit. That didn't happen. And then Noah Gray, KC was going to be in a lot of 13 and 12 personnel, and Noah Gray, the tight end, benefits a lot from like 8 dudes being on Kelce. His was like 10.5 yards, and he ended up with like 6 or 8. I even threw a little bit on Noah Gray, a TD, which was like plus 1,000 something, and that didn't hit. So pretty close to even, mainly because of the McKinnon thing. I was positive it was going to hit, and that sucked.
Yeah, Brandon alluded to it. I took Philly minus 1.5, lost that. It did. Yeah, my pick was I had Hurts 1 rushing TD, Hurts 2 rushing TD. Sorry, Hurts 1 TD plus 550, 2 for plus 800, and 3 for plus 4,100. So hit all 3 of those, which made the night because that was about the only thing I did. But that was a rare one that a long shot actually comes through. And then I see Randall is in the house. Still no picture, still no face for TV, but you want to talk about your gambling a little bit?
Yeah, I come on to just sit here and cry. I played a 7-way parlay, or no, an 8-way parlay, and hit 7 of the 8 legs, and missed only on the sacks part, which was 4. So that pretty well destroyed my night gambling. But I had a huge night in daily fantasy. Well, for me, a huge night. I ended up winning like $140 on single game entries. So about what I lost on gambling, I made back in DFS. But I thought it was a great Super Bowl. And I'm like the rest of you guys. I don't think I had a good grips on it. I was kind of all over the place except for that one parlay. And it seemed like I actually thought it was going to go Chiefs and under. So that under killed a lot of my bets.
A lot of analysts were picking under all day, and I just, I ended up going. I just didn't like. I guess the theory was if Eagles were the favorite, they're going to keep KC off the field. But and we'll talk more about the game. But yeah, they destroyed the over. Well, Randall, are you sticking on to talk the game with us, or you just want to come and talk about your gambling?
I'm going to stick around for a while, but I did want to lament on how good Vegas is, because I think in our little group of our fantasy group, we had 3 guys pick long leg, long shots, and we all 3 missed one of the 6 or one of the 7. And Vegas gets you every time on that one. So it was kind of like almost the story of the Super Bowl.
Got greedy, clicked one more box.
Yeah, I did.
Well, let's transition to the game itself. Obviously, Philly had a 10-point halftime lead. Anytime, unless you're the Falcons, you would take a 10-point lead in any game at halftime and be happy with it. But we saw what happened in the second half. Brandon, I'm going to you. Simple question. With a complex answer. Did KC win it or did Philly lose it?
It's a good question, and I've gone back and forth on that. I think Philly lost it. I think it came down to the turnover game, and that Jalen Hurts turnover with that touchdown, it really kind of sealed the game. If you look back, watching that game, how tight it was, how dominant Casey's offensive line was, which, you know, we had, all of us had bets on sacks and all this stuff. I mean, Philly was, we all expected, 2+ sacks out of Philly, and that O-line just had their way with Philly. And, looking back, Mahomes, he did it. He didn't try to do too much, and everyone thought when he got hit late in the second or first half and going to the locker room limping, it was like, he might be done. Like and he came back out and did what he always does and found a way to win the game. But ultimately it comes down to turnovers. And I said that, leading up to this game, that it's going to come down to turnovers. And if Patrick Mahomes could limit turnovers on his end and not try and do too much, I thought that's when Kansas City went. I mean, because you look at the totals here. I mean, the Eagles had 400 and almost 30 yards of offense total. KC like 300 something. I mean, Mahomes only threw for 182 yards. I mean, that is not Mahomes-esque. Mm-hmm. Andy Reid, I mean, he's a genius offensively. I mean, he did what he had to do, controlled the time of possession, and I think it ultimately came down to that turnover.
Yeah. Well, all right. That's a good segue. Tom, let me go to you on this. Again, simple question, but complex answer. Did Kansas City roll out a perfect second half game plan, or did Philadelphia Kansas City's offense roll out the perfect game plan, or did Philadelphia's defense just fall asleep at the wheel in the biggest moment and just couldn't figure it out?
Well, I think one thing Raj and I talked about last night was the amount of times the Eagles are in a zone defense, and it was something like 70% throughout the season and playoffs that they were in zone. Well, that wasn't the case. Sunday they played man quite often, and I just think this is a situation where they went in to halftime and Andy Reid made the adjustments based on the defense that the Eagles were showing them. A lot of their plays were designed to look like the receivers were going one way, and specifically that Kadarius Toney touchdown at the goal line, where it looked like he was going to go into the slot, as in even big play Slay took off running. So they fooled the defense, and he just kind of stopped, turned around, and he was wide open. So I think Kansas City made the adjustments, specifically Andy Reid, and I think Philadelphia got on their heels. And once they got on their heels, they couldn't play the game that they were playing in that first half. receivers weren't getting open as much, and they were relying on Hurts to kind of be the ball carrier. So, but the one thing that really hurt Philadelphia the most was their lack of ability to run the football. That wasn't named Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I agree.
They became very predictable. A lot of the plays were geared for him to run, and I think it's a situation where the cute coach got outcoached, and Andy Reid won this. You know, he gave kudos to Eric Bieniemy a lot, but he gets all the credit as far as I'm concerned. They just made the right adjustments at halftime, and I want to know what they put in Patrick Mahomes' ankle, because he he didn't look. I mean, he was squirming in pain in that second quarter. He came out at the second half. He didn't grimace once until I think one of the long runs he had. He kind of got up hobbling, but no, they were outcoached. Kansas City.
When you score on every possession, no punts, it wasn't even that challenging. And so I agree. They just made the adjustments, and the Eagles didn't. Yep. All right, Raj, we're going to you. We briefly talked about it before we got on. What are your thoughts on the penalty at the end of the game?
So I actually thought that it's something you had to call. It was a 3rd and 8. Juju was getting open all day. I thought there were 2 holds, really. There was a jersey tug rather, when Juju made his break, and then there was one, towards the top of the route. It sucked because a game that great, you just hate to see a critical penalty there. And, the refs had let them play, but the flip side would be if you didn't call that, and it was a penalty. Even Bradbury said, I held him. I mean, case closed in that sense. It's nobody was crying that they got hosed, but flip side would be, 154 left and they try a long field goal, and then Philly gets the ball, and, they could have won the game. So it sucked as a conclusion. It was anticlimactic, but it was the right call, in my opinion.
So the interesting things that from that is it looked like, from the players' reaction, it looks like Mahomes saw it right away.
He did.
And he threw to him for that reason.
I think so too.
As soon as he threw it, he pointed. The receivers, the cornerbacks were kind of like, it's a normal play, but and I don't know if it was designed to do that, but that's what it accomplished.
I think so too. And Tom and I discussed also that the flag was late, and that even further supports that decision that he did that. And he's gonna get more calls. I mean, let's be honest, Mahomes doesn't miss someone by 10 yards unless something happened, and the refs subconsciously know that, whether consciously or subconsciously.
And that brings up a good point, because people I heard on the radio today, I've been driving around the state, like they were saying, well, he wouldn't have caught it anyways. But now I'm thinking of it, I was like, well, that was probably by design. He threw it that far because it's like, because if it's picked off or something, maybe they don't make that call.
Absolutely.
The fact that he threw it, so my guy would have caught it, but he couldn't get there. So,
I agree, but I understand that illegal contact, you throw the flag right away. After 5 yards, usually there was something else going on there, but in the end, it was the right call. The circumstances may not have been awesome or supported that, and the game was amazing, but it was in fact a penalty.
Well, let's stick with you now. Mahomes has 2. He's been to 3, 1, 2, 5 straight AFC championships. That division that he's in keeps getting more and more of a cluster. They've had home field most of these AFC championship games. What's your if you had to set an over under of how many Mahomes gets? What do you think,
dude? I mean, beginning of this year, you said KC would be as good. I said no. I was on Philly, and you had said don't be one of those guys on Philly. I thought Philly, based on the acquisitions, was going to be awesome. I did not see Kansas City doing this, and my point being is they did it. Obviously, they lost arguably the best playmaker in the NFL. And when you look at that team, they're a great organization. When it comes to drafting, there were 7 or 8 young players on defense that they drafted that started. Guys that made, including Willie Gay, but Curtis Bolton, the linebacker who, by the way, was second in the NFL with 102 solo tackles. He had 8 solo in that game, including that TD return. Both their big corners. Another big corner, one guy that had a sack, a rookie, I think 4th or 5th rounder from Wisconsin, Leo Chenal. My point being is this organization is just top to bottom the best organization in football. They are the New England Patriots. When their offensive line was healthy, look what they did against Tampa. They had like 1 starter there. So the sky is really the limit, man. Like they just keep reinforcing, and they are the best talent evaluators, the best play callers, the best schemers. I mean, look what they did in adjustment-wise, time management, discipline, everything. I mean, who's to say, man? He can have 5, 6 if he stays healthy.
Yeah, I don't think – I never thought anyone would catch Brady, and I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but, man, it's looking very similar. Tom, we're going to go from one quarterback to the other. You can make an argument that most valuable player in that game and all season was Jalen Hurts. He's on his rookie contract. I think we're all in agreement he's going to get paid. What does it look like?
Oh, well, I mean, don't be surprised if you see something transpire before the start of the next season, so they don't have to worry about losing him the free agency. Their ownership's pretty solid. I don't see that being a problem, but if there's one thing he developed into, and I don't think a lot of people thought it would happen, myself included, was he became a quarterback this year. He took that next level step where he became a passer. He wasn't just a running quarterback like, everybody seemed to think he was in the big fad in the NFL. He's got a big arm, and he proved it in that first half, the touchdown to A.J. Brown. He's a gunslinger, and I think you looking at his ability to make plays with his arm now, that makes him dangerous. And in my honest opinion, I think he kind of got hosed for the NFL MVP. I think he deserved it, and they penalized him because he missed the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, which I think is wrong. Up until that point, there wasn't anybody that was even close to him. So I think that fueled a little bit of his fire going into this game, and what he was able to do both with his arm and his feet was remarkable. And, talking pre-show, my wife basically picked the Chiefs to win, but Hurts to get the MVP, which, before the game, I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? But after the game, we're like, you know what? His numbers say, it's possible. And it's been done before. The last time a player got the MVP on a losing situation was Jaguar, the goalie for the Anaheim Ducks in the Stanley Cup Finals quite a few years ago. It was a Game 7 series. He got the Conn Smythe, even though they lost. But so it's been proven, it's been done before, and he could have. There's definitely an argument where he could have gotten it because his stats definitely showed it. But that fumble was pretty bad, and I think that probably was the big factor.
Yeah,
and
it was such a fluke fumble too, just switching hands.
Like he lost control or something.
Yeah. I'll say this, there were a lot of, even with, the Eagles, great record and how well Hurts played and a lot of, in MVP votes, there were still some doubters. He showed he belongs on the biggest stage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just cause he's next up, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets, Mahomes money. Because that's just the market, which just shows you, going back to Raj's point, how well run the Chiefs are. They saw it. They got that deal done. It was $500 million.
Well, even when they played him, they were coming off Alex Smith's greatest season, his best season in his career. we're going with this guy. So that
Yeah.
means that they saw that well in advance. So that was a risky move, and it paid off for him.
Yeah. And then, and as we talked, the guy who coached him in college had a losing record. It's just, it's
hard to
crazy.
believe. Hard to
Yep.
believe.
All right, Brandon. So sticking with runners up and someone who hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, Hurts is definitely now in this category. Who in your mind, who's the next quarterback that gets one and why?
I mean, right now, my top 3 QBs, Mahomes, Burrow, and Hurts. I think Hurts made his statement, in this season alone, and on top of that, the Super Bowl. He's surpassed Josh Allen. Josh Allen, for some reason, tends to do something completely different in big time situations. I mean, I think Hurts did all he could in this game, minus the fumble. That was a fluke kind of deal. And ultimately, I think that was the biggest part of the game changer. I know the Chiefs did really well making adjustments, but they were also down 10.
Yeah.
I mean, so they had to, but they wouldn't have been down 10, minus the fumble. So I think Hurts is right there. Him and Burrow, one of those two. If Burrow could knock off KC, which he's done in the past, I think he's prime and ready to do that.
Let me ask you this: is Lamar Jackson still in this picture, or has Jalen passed him as the dominant dual threat?
Yeah, Lamar's like number 6 for me at this point. Like, I mean, he's great, and he's got an arm. Jalen's accuracy is much better. I think his football IQ is a little higher, especially after watching the Super Bowl game. I mean, this guy, again, I was one of those kind of naysayers. He bounced around in college from Bama to Oklahoma, and he couldn't make it at Bama, but Bama had a lot of talent, as they always do. And look what he's doing over Tua and some of these other Bama quarterbacks. So I love Jalen Hurts. He's definitely got a Super Bowl in his future, in my opinion.
And Rich makes a good point. He just says Hurts is loaded with talent around him, and this kind of was what happened with Russell Wilson in Seattle. They won on his rookie deal. Once you pay the quarterback, all that talent goes around. Is Hurts good enough to overcome? Not necessarily be Mahomes, because I'm not sure anyone's going to be, but is he good enough to overcome the having to get rid of the receivers? We know he's not Tannehill, who can lose A.J. Brown and still do it. So,
I mean, that's a really good question, and that's yet to be seen. Adding the talent of A.J. Brown really kind of set them over the edge this year. Yeah, we saw what a great talent he is. We all knew that as Titans fans, but putting a quarterback that can actually, and an offensive line. Their offensive line was great this year. So, he's a top 3 dude. I mean, there's not very many quarterbacks that play at this level that are that good. So, I mean,
and if Aaron Rodgers goes to the AFC, if he goes to the Jets, has been reported. It's a 2-team, Philadelphia and San Francisco.
Yeah. And they're looking at Brock Purdy.
Tom's Lions may win a playoff game in the NFC.
Don't forget about the Pontiac Pussycats.
Yeah. Let's bring you guys all on. We don't have much time left. Another storyline that was just weird and an unforced error by a league that they make a lot of errors, but they're just bulletproof. But the field, they were experimenting for 2 years and mixing some grass. Brandon, I know you played a lot of football in high school and stuff. Did you ever play did y'all ever play like MTSU on the turf or anything like that? And just kind of explain to people that didn't play football what kind of the different footing feels like and how it could affect you.
Yeah, so it's very, very different. For one, going to turf, on natural grass. I mean, cleats are completely different. Just the slickness of the field, like you've really got to practice ahead of time on that field and learn kind of your footing and your cuts, because they're completely different on a turf field versus a natural field. And this whole grass thing, they're saying that the halftime show could have affected that because all the stuff on the turf heated up the grass, and there was then it got a lot of moisture and it made it really slick. I mean, there's so many other controversies out there about that, but I am not a fan of turf field. Now, this was,
but this was actual grass.
This was real grass.
This was actual
they
grass.
Had it outside and they moved it inside.
Yeah. No, I know that, but I'm just saying, personally, back in my day, turf fields were the worst. Now they're much better, and they're more consistent. So maybe that would have been a better option in this, application. But everyone, wanted real grass, and unfortunately, that's kind of what happened. And I think, there's some science behind that when what happened with the halftime show, all the lights and people, and more moisture changing on the field. So,
and Tom, Roger, go to you really quickly. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why the sack numbers were so low is the defensive linemen couldn't get off the ball.
The over pursuit, you got these big guys going full speed, and you got Mahomes, juking and jiving, and they run right past you. Well, one of the things I did hear, which makes sense, they said they painted the entire field, so to make it look greener. So that definitely you put
not the Masters, guys.
Instagram filters on the field.
Any type of moisture you're going to get, it's a nightmare. And they were slipping and sliding the whole game, and it makes you wonder if there was good footing. How much different. How would that game have been? And I don't want to make excuses that the field, although the penalty was a big problem in my opinion. But anyways, I digress. But yeah, I mean, both teams. This was something that affected both teams, and fortunately, there were no injuries because of it. Which what was it? The first touchdown Kansas City had, one of their guys. He went to celebrate, and his leg came out from under him, and he could have broke his leg on that situation. But I mean, it's another embarrassment for the NFL, but they'll recover like they always do.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those reminders, like as great of a game as that was, and the whole spectacle,
could have been
everything, better. They can still get better. And if they choose to. Raj, it's been a while. Any final thoughts from you about anything we talked about or anything you want to add?
We had kind of just alluded towards this, that play calling wise, I mean, Andy Reid and Bieniemy just tooled the Philly coordinators, especially Gannon. A guy, like we said, was in zone 72% of the time during the year. It was something like 56% during this game. And Reid and company just kept adjusting. And I think the best example was on the Mahomes run on first down from the 43. And if you looked at the formation, it was 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, 1 back. And they motioned, I think, Kelsey across, and then the other 3 dudes ran 3 verts. So Philly's in man. The motion pulled the safety out of the box. I think there were 8 initially. Everybody's running downfield, even after backup tight ends, and the middle of the field is wide open. And they did that all game on both TDs we talked about. If you watch Tony, and Sky Moore, very similar situations, and Philly was lost. And finally, special teams, the Philly punter had hit that 38-yarder, and Kadarius Toney, the 65-yard return. That was massive in my opinion, and that, along with the fumble return TD, explains the short drives and the lack of offensive statistics. But if you look at,
just swung.
Yeah, exactly. That was a huge swing, but it's just over and over. You got Philly, last thing I'll say, a team with a running back to 1,269 yards and 11 TDs, The Philly 3 running backs, three-headed monster, average, I think, 2.65 yards per carry, about 2 full yards under what they did on the year. Meanwhile, Kansas City averaged 6.1 yards without technically their starter, but Pacheco, McKinnon, they were gashing them. Mahomes. It was just play calling. And in the end, yeah, the field sucked, but both teams played on it. And the KC offensive line and defensive line, and again, as a Raider fan, it pains me to say this, but they dominated. Every phase, I felt like Kansas City was the better team. I mean, aside from Hurts's performance and whatnot, but if you just go down the line, time management, Sirianni is a moron, play calling, everything, Kansas City was the better team. So when you asked about who won versus the other team losing, Kansas City won that game, in my opinion.
Yep.
All right, Randall, final thoughts before we sign off?
Is Randall there?
And I don't think we've gave enough love to one player, and I just want to take a second and say the unicorn on the field is Travis Kelce. That guy changed the whole game plan for Philly, and Philly went man-to-man because of Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's presence changed what Philly did on the game. Also, when y'all were talking about Super Bowls, I'm excited for Patrick Mahomes. I do think he's elite. I do think he's the quarterback of this generation. But I think we saw the birth of his competition. Jalen Hurts was the best football player on that field Sunday. And he took a team that had no business being there and took them within a breath and winning the Super Bowl. I can't tell you how much respect I left with Jalen Hurts. I think he may be the second best quarterback in the NFL going into next year. And the only one above him would be Mahomes. But let's look at it. Mahomes had 182 yards. Hurts, 300 yards passing, 70 yards rushing. That kid, I love Hurts. I had him on my fantasy team. I just think he is the other unicorn that was on the field. So you have 3 generational players to me, and Mahomes, Kelce, and Hurts on the field at the same time.
I have never changed what the next sentence was going to come out of my mouth more than I just did right there. I was about to say, oh, and if the NFL doesn't change those rules about how the Eagles can push, oh, Hurts is going to be on my fantasy team. But then now knowing that Randall had him on his fantasy team and still finished in the bottom 2, well, then maybe not. So I'm going to have to reevaluate everything.
I was a semi-finalist. I wasn't in the bottom 2 with you. So
I think that might have been the big reason why he got that speech, is because he had him on his fantasy team. So.
man,
It's all about justification.
I would have gave you $1 million to tell you Jalen Hurts is going to be an NFL flop. But the kid went to Oklahoma, worked with Lincoln Riley for a year, remade himself, went to Quarterback Gurus. Go watch his throwing motion at Alabama and go watch it today. He made himself into an elite quarterback. Nothing more can be said for that.
And pure class as well. We talked about this, that when I think it was a call that was a review and the Kansas City guys were walking back to the line of scrimmage on defense, and Sirianni like stuck his hand up and was like waving them back, almost taunting them. And Hurts grabbed his head coach's arm and pulled it down, kind of smirked at him and shook his head like, no, man, don't do that. I mean, when as a freaking kid checked his head coach like that, was also a kid and kind of a moron. But, I mean, he is the total package, and Chain said it best. I was not a believer. I thought he was the product of circumstance and his surroundings. I was dead wrong. He is a future Hall of Famer. And, again, all class and character. Just a great kid.
All right, gentlemen.
And 27 years old. That's what we saw on the NFL Sunday.
Wow.
All right, we went a little bit long, but it was all good conversation. Again, please like and subscribe. We will be back live on Thursday at 8 o'clock.
9 p.m. Eastern.
8 Central, 9 Eastern.
What is it? Indian time, Raj? What? So that's going to be.
That would be 10:30 start time
9:05.
Eastern.
But thank you, everyone. Great insight. And then we look forward to seeing you guys Thursday. We haven't made a final agenda yet, but we'll be talking. I'm going to the Tennessee-Alabama game, basketball game tomorrow, number 1 versus number 10. Hopefully I'll be able to gloat to all my Alabama friends. We've got Daytona coming up. We have got the XFL starting. We have got baseball happening and NBA trade, coaching trades, free agency, Titans quarterback drama, all possibilities. But thank you guys, and we'll see you on Thursday.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to River City Media's own Reckless Speculation. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, searching Reckless Speculation. And catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to catching you right here next week with another